Hello there, Quimby here. Our meetings are usually a little more formal than this, but I have the sniffles. And so I decided that rather than go out in the field, as we usually do...
Ready?
Actually, my mum won't let me go out when I'm ill. As a matter of fact, she insists that I come home and stay here in my old room until I recover. Yes, Mum?
Did you eat your kidney pie?
Not now, Mum. I'm on the telly.
Well, you tell them to ring you back later.
Rather than go out in the field, as I usually do, I decided to take this opportunity to answer some of the many letters that I have received. If I don't get to yours, don't be discouraged. I do answer all my mail. Perhaps we can do this again on the air sometime. This first one is from Lamont Swindlehurst, RD1, Coons Corners, Pennsylvania. Dear Professor Quimby, is it true that George Washington really had false teeth made of wood? Yes, it is. Well, it's quite common, in fact. The procedure was usually to mail order a set from Poor Richard's Almanac or some other publication. The advertisement usually read something like this. Are you a toothless wonder? Have you ever been embarrassed when you had to gum a cob of corn or a stale Johnny cake? Well, the Hickory Bicuspid Company has your answer. You send in your money, and they sent you a large chunk of paraffin, which you would bite into, thus creating a mold to send back. And then their expert craftsmen will have you scoffing through an apple in a flash. George Washington had a set of dentures carved from beech wood with spearmint inserts in an effort to avoid bad breath. It was said that when he spoke, it was like a spring breeze. This was one of the things that made him so popular with the ladies.
Who's popular with the ladies?
George Washington, Mom.
Washington? I don't know them. You know what your father says. You should choose your friends more carefully, Freddie.
This next one is from Fritz O'Deutsch, 203 Montpelier Avenue, Turkeyville, Pennsylvania. Dear Professor Quimby, who is Rudyard Neal Grebe? I understand that he is famous and comes from Pennsylvania. Rudyard Neal Grebe was a naturalist inventor. He did reside in Pennsylvania. One of his great naturalist discoveries was an aquatic bird. I have a picture of it here on this sugar pack, the pied-billed grebe. He also invented the Kleenex, but he never got credit for it. One of his greatest accomplishments was the design for a clock by which the sun always rose at 8 a.m. and sunset was always at 8 p.m. The time varied gradually, a little slower in the summer, a little faster in the winter. The only difficulty was that no one else had one. So he was always either terribly early or terribly late for his appointments. He eventually died of exposure waiting for the New Haven Railroad, and his idea for the Kleenex was stolen. Time left for just two quick personal questions. This first one is from someone who wants their name withheld. Dear FQ, sometimes I'm glad for my good diction. Are you married? No, actually, I'm not married. I met a girl in 1949 at a publisher's party, and we have been going rather steadily since then. I expect we shall be married one day. Her father has been intimating lately that he's getting tired of her living at home. One last question. This one's from Mr. Ted Mack, 246 Crescendo Boulevard, Southern Upper Darby, Pennsylvania. Dear Fred, on your last Pennsylvania Magazine program, you played the piano. Do you play any other instrument? Yes, actually, I do. I play the guitar. On the last program, there was a tune that I wanted to play for you, but we didn't have enough time. Your kind letter gives me an excuse to play it now. This is another example of one of the very fine blues tunes that originate in Pennsylvania. This is a prison blues tune. Some fine blues originate in prison. This one was written by a man called Numbers Rabinowitz. He was a brilliant mathematician and embezzler. In 1935, he was sentenced to 20 years in Rockview State Penitentiary. While there, he was assigned to making license plates. With his brilliant mathematical mind, he devised a system whereby if any 4 license plates come together that he made, the plates' letters spell out an obscene word. He wrote this tune. It's called the Blue License Plate Blues. And the sounds depict the pitch of the small hammer engraving the letters and numbers on the license plate. Hello there, Quimby here. It has been said that the Constitution, the law, is whatever the Supreme Court says it is. The law is whatever the judge says it is on a local level as well. Accordingly, the moral tone of the times, indeed the moral tone of an area, can have a peculiar effect upon the interpretation of the law. Such was the case in 1913 in Nantiglow, Pennsylvania, the case of the Commonwealth versus Delbert P. Rosemold, a case which I should like to recreate in part for you today. Your Honor, Mr. Rosemold, as prosecutor for the state in this area, it is my duty to charge you with failure to pay your property tax in the sum of $32.50. How do you plead? Not guilty. Not guilty. Very well, Mr. Rosemold, we shall proceed. Was it determined that you owed $32.50 in property taxes to the Commonwealth this year? Yup. Yup. And was this amount due, like everyone else's, on the 15th of last month? Yup. Yup. And did you pay this amount by the 15th? Yep. Yep. What then, Mr. Rosemold, is the difficulty? The tax collector refused to accept my payment. The tax collector refused to accept your payment? How did you choose to pay this sum? In cash, in silver, in gold? How? I wrote a check. You wrote a check. And was this a conventional check? What do you mean? I mean, Mr. Rosemold, was this check written on the standard paper form provided by the bank for such purposes? Nope. Nope. And why was that?
I ran out of them.
You ran out of them. On what, Mr. Rosemold, did you write your check?
I don't recall.
You don't recall?
I don't recall.
You don't recall? He doesn't recall. Get on with it.
So, you don't recall. At this point, the prosecutor uttered a phrase which has been repeated countless times in courtrooms and law schools ever since.
You don't recall on what you wrote the check. Perhaps, Mr. Rosemold, this will refresh your memory.
Rosemold had written his property tax check on the side of a cow. It read, "To the Bank of Nantic Glow, paid to the order of the tax collector, who is no gentleman, but instead a wretched miscreant, the sum of $32.50, and may he rot." Clearly, from the tone of the language and the tone of the cow, belligerent at best, Rosemold's attitude was one of contempt. And ordinarily, the court would have given that interpretation. But the moral tone of the times was different, one of general disfavor towards the purposes that tax funds were being used for, and the fact that the judge may have been a little disgruntled with the prosecutor. A different decision was made. Due to the fact that we have seen few of the tax dollars paid return to this community and services, and that the tax collector is, in fact, a miscreant, although not as large a one as the prosecuting attorney, it is the decision of this court that the charges against Mr. Rosemold be dropped. Next case, please. Although the Rosemold decision was good-natured and amusing, the situation snowballed, and scenes like this unfolded for several months hence. Does this magic marker and stale jar of Cool Whip refresh your memory, Mr. Harris? Is this your bowling ball and Crayola, Mr. Nugent? Fortunately or unfortunately, the presiding judge suffered a nervous breakdown from continued exposure to the prosecuting attorney. He was replaced by a different judge with a different opinion. He gave the ruling which still exists today. A check need not be accepted by anyone. It is merely a note to the bank informing them to pay someone else, and as such, it is not legal tender. So, if you were to write your property tax check on a goat, for example, the tax collector might be amused, but he would not have to accept it.
Say, Mac,
What is it?
I'm on my way to pay my taxes. Have you got change for a chicken?
Hello there, Quimby here. Today we're going to journey out into the woodlands of Pennsylvania in search of this elusive devil, Fernworth's terrapin, or Fernworth's turtle. This species may be in danger, and we are going to help investigate the problem. The recent outbreak of salmonella, the dread killer turtle disease, among its smaller cousins like this one, sold in department stores, may be having an adverse effect upon Pennsylvania's forest environment.
Our trail begins here with a disturbing incident all too common across the state. One of the smaller domestic turtles, possibly infected with salmonella, has escaped and headed for the deep woods. My assistant, Jim Dandy, has picked up the track, and we are off in pursuit. As more of these infected creatures invade the streams and ponds of the forest, the chances increase of the disease spreading among the wild species. We hope to capture a wild fernsworth and see if salmonella has begun its gruesome course. As we approach the deep woods, we are treated to a glimpse of Pennsylvania's magnificent wildlife. Ahead, a young deer eyes our jeep cautiously. On the left, Jim spots a beautiful black duck. It looks like a female. We sight a wild turkey, one of several of Pennsylvania's many game fowl, at the end of the trail for our jeep. We must proceed on foot from here. Some of the species we run into in the interior are dangerous, and we must proceed with caution. We're in luck. One of our scouts reports seeing a large fernsworth sunning himself on a small island nearby. We proceeded onward as quickly as possible. Yes, there he is, a magnificent specimen. We quickly formulate plans for his capture. We placed our trap at one end of the island, a crude affair, but effective. It would hold the beast if we could draw him into it. At the other end of the island, the native drummers would beat the bush and drive our quarry into the trap. I wanted to be in on the capture myself, so Jim remained on the mainland to oversee the operation. There was nothing for us to do but watch and wait. Our plan seemed to be working. He was heading for the trap, but suddenly he veered off, heading for the deep water. If we missed this one, we might not spot another one for months. There was nothing else for me to do but try to bring him in. But I was in for a fight. These brutes can be surly, especially in the water.
Well, it looks like I'm having a time of it, and Jim may need to give me a hand, just as you may need to give a hand to public broadcasting. In order for these wild species to survive, they need our help and support. And in order for public broadcasting to survive, they need your support. Well, let's return to our island and see how we're doing.
It looks like the situation is well in hand. What a magnificent specimen.
We conducted extensive tests on this fellow and found no evidence of salmonella. As a matter of fact, most of the domestic turtles that escaped turned up under the refrigerator or behind the couch, limiting the spread of the disease to various corners of the house. Well, the species is not in danger, and we can return our fernsworth to the lake, free once again to roam in Pennsylvania's wild fiefdom. Hello there, Quimby here. I'm standing next to the USS Niagara. It was from the deck of this ship that Commodore Oliver Hazard Perry uttered the immortal words, "We have met the enemy and they are ours." The key to our discussion today is immortal words. I recently conducted a poll of 100 Pennsylvanians, and the results are interesting.
Madam, can you complete the following phrase? We have met the enemy.
And they are ours.
And they are ours.
And they are ours.
We have met the enemy and they're not so bad.
Which is an interesting thought. 95% of the people answered correctly, however. Furthermore, 70 out of 100 people knew who it was who said it and under what circumstances.
That was Commodore Perry, and he beat the British in the War of 1812.
It has intrigued historians to no end that this phrase should be so well remembered. Pursuing my own theory regarding this phenomenon, I asked one further query. Madam, who was Matthew Galbraith Perry? Who? I don't recall.
Matthew Galbraith Perry was Oliver Hazard Perry's brother. He was also a naval officer, and his career was just as distinguished as his brother's, but no one remembers him at all. Why is this? Well, there are three major theories as to why Oliver Perry is so well remembered. The first one being the opportune moment, well-turned phrase theory, which is simply, if one wants to be remembered, one should participate in a significant event and be prepared with snappy rhetoric. But there are holes in this theory. Often, a person is remembered for an event alone without saying anything. For example, what did Custer say at his last stand? We may never know. Conversely, people have been remembered for saying something without an event involved at all. A penny saved is a penny earned. Saving a penny is hardly a historic event. Also, there are many dangers involved in practicing this theory. Rhetoric is a delicate affair. A single word can and has scuttled fame to the depths of obfuscation.
Gridley is such a word. I'm standing next to a monument to Captain Charles V. Gridley, to whom it was said, "You may fire when ready, Gridley." Everyone remembers Gridley, but no one remembers who told him to fire. So much for the opportune moment, well-turned phrase theory. Theory number 2 regarding Oliver Perry's fame is the Scribner of French Creek, or Pennsylvania Baconian theory. This school of thought holds that here, along French Creek, there lived a speech and journalism instructor from Allegheny College named Francine Bacon. She disappeared mysteriously in 1810, following which Perry said, "We have met the enemy." Horace Greeley said, "Go west, young man," and Lincoln gave his Gettysburg Address. All of this rhetoric has been purportedly ghostwritten by Francine Bacon. This is preposterous. In the first place, Francine Bacon wrote bad poetry. Secondly, her disappearance was not mysterious at all. She ran off with an athletic instructor from Philadelphia. The Pennsylvania Baconians are a branch of the Flat Earth Society. Finally, we come to the most feasible theory, my own. This theory indicates why Oliver Hazard Perry is famous and why Matthew Galbraith Perry is not. I call it the action-reaction Galbraith factor theory. In researching the Perry family, I discovered that Matthew Galbraith was named after a third cousin. Significantly, his father could never remember the name of this cousin, and consequently, he had difficulty remembering the name of his second son. He referred to him as Oliver's brother, or when speaking to him directly, he called him son or my boy. You must know someone whose name you cannot seem to recall. The fault is not with your memory. Somewhere in the past, the father, mother, teacher, object of affection of these individuals could not remember their name. This puts a permanent dent in their self-concept, and consequently, this quality of anonymity exudes from them, and one perceives it as one might perceive poor health or a lack of confidence, and you cannot remember their name. This quality I call the Galbraith factor.
Also, there is the principle of action-reaction. For every action, there must be an equal and opposite reaction. For every truly memorable person in the world, there must be, somewhere, a truly unmemorable person. Matthew Galbraith Perry was a truly unmemorable person, thus allowing his brother to go down in history.
Which brings us to the Perry Monument, a beautiful obelisk, a tribute to Oliver Hazard Perry here on the shore of Lake Erie. And in Japan, where Matthew Galbraith Perry sailed unmemorably for America, there is an unmemorable monument somewhere which no one seems to be able to find, thus clearly illustrating my theory of action-reaction Galbraith factor.